All right, it's the top of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's stress-free test prep webinar for SBAC educators. We are so excited to have you here for today's event. My name is Alyssa DiVincenzo, and I will be your host today. I'm the social media and community specialist with Edulastic and love helping educators connect to great resources. I'm here to help make tonight's event go smoothly. Especially with such a crazy and unpredictable last couple of years in education, we are happy to be able to offer this event to help you find tools and resources to help you guide your students. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us here as we all prepare for state assessments. All right, welcome again. Today's event is in webinar format, which means your audio and video are off. So you can relax, munch on that last bag of chips, sip on some tea, no problem. We do encourage you to use the communication tools that are available to you. So let's practice by using the chat box and take a moment to get to know each other in the chat today. Make sure you're set to share with everybody so that we can all see your comments. Then type in your role, the subject you teach, and how you're feeling about state testing this year. Awesome, welcome everyone. I'm seeing a little bit of, we're feeling a little nervous for this year. I totally understand. Roles from all over the place, that's amazing. Yes, I know. I'm seeing a lot of teachers expressing that this has been a hard year, and I totally understand. Hopefully, no matter how you're feeling right now, you'll leave today's event feeling a little less stressed and a bit more confident. I encourage you to keep the conversation going in the chat as the presentation goes on. Momentarily, I will give a brief overview of Edulastic, followed by our featured presentations. We will have time at the end for a Q&A and discussion, so please type any questions you have throughout the presentation in the Q&A box, and they will be addressed during or after the presentation today. All right, next slide, please. So Edulastic is a great assessment tool to help get you and your students ready for state testing. Edulastic features over 50 tech-enhanced question types, over 90,000 items in the Edulastic Certified Item Bank, over 60,000 assessments in the test library, standards tracking, mastery reports, and player skins that look almost identical to the look and feel of your state test. These are just a handful of features available to you once you join Edulastic. Next slide, please. As we know, SBAC measures math and ELA standards mastery for grades 3 through 8, as well as grade 11. Edulastic's test library is a great resource to access practice questions for these standardized tests. Next slide, please. So successful preparation for the SBAC requires practice with a variety of item types. You'll find everything from multiple choice to drag and drop, hotspot, short text on the SBAC, and you will give your students practice with these through Edulastic. Edulastic has over 50 question types, ranging from multiple choice and true and false to graphing, drawing response, and more. Next slide, please. So when you give your students practice, that means they will, oh, I'm so sorry. When you give your students practice that matches the look and feel of your state test, it'll make the test day super straightforward for them. They no longer have to focus on how to take the test. They just need to demonstrate their mastery of the content itself. So here's a look on the slide of what the SBAC question looks like. Thank you. And now on the next slide, we'll take a look at what an Edulastic assessment looks like when you add the SBAC player skin. And next slide, please. So if you're giving your students formative assessments or assessments on Edulastic, they'll be very comfortable by the time the test day comes around. For comparison, here's a standard Edulastic assessment view from the student perspective as well. You can see it's also very similar to the Edulastic assessment with the player skin on it. And next slide. And here's the side-by-side comparison of the Edulastic assessment with the SBAC itself. So you can see they're very similar in format. Next slide, please. At the end of the SBAC, students will have the opportunity to check back on their questions. And as you'll see on the next slide, it is the same with Edulastic. That way your students will see the same exact routine when they are practicing. Next slide, please. The live class board and reports make it easy to track your mastery and see where concepts and learning standards need to be revisited leading up to the test. I'm sure our presenters will touch on this live class board a little bit later, so I'll leave some of that information up to them. But if there are any questions at the end, I will be happy to revisit the live class board. Next slide, please. So to find SBAC related items, you're going to log into your Edulastic account, go to your test library, make sure you clear your filters and search SBAC. You'll find many, many assessments in the public library that are already available for you to clone or use directly. All right, it's the moment you've all been waiting for. I'm excited to turn our presentation over to our wonderful educators. First up, we have Celia Castellanos. Celia is a math teacher and instructional coach from California. Take it away, Celia.
Thank you. And I'm so glad that you were going through the new features in Edulastic. For me, some of those are new. I have noticed that ever since I started using Edulastic, approximately 5 to 6 years ago, features have been added every year that make it a lot better. So the SBAC skin was something new to me. Can we go to the next slide? And the best way that I found to tell about how to use Edulastic for SBAC test taking is to go through my story. The reason why I first started using Edulastic was because I was looking for that online tool that would allow me to give my students an SBAC-like assessment. From my observations during the SBAC with my students, I realized that they needed more practice with the online testing platform. Some of the students were getting stuck with the technical features and weren't able to focus on the content. For example, some of them were stuck with how to use the online math tools or how to go ahead and actually take a digital performance task virtually. So those things were stopping my students from having more success. And that led me to look for a platform that will allow me to create SBAC-like assessments to give students that experience and that opportunity practice throughout the whole school year and not just at the very end. Next slide. What I found from my first year of using Edulastic was that the need was a lot greater than what I could imagine. My students really did need the opportunity to internalize tech tools, but the one that really surprised me more was the universal digital formatting. Something that I ran into a lot was that through Edulastic, I was able to find out that a lot of my students were using the multiplication sign in the calculator to write the variable X instead of using the variable X either on their keyboard or through the variables that are given in the math tools on these assessments. And this was something that was happening on SBAC. So students were ending up with a higher number of questions that were wrong, even though content knowledge wise, they did know the content and they were putting something in that was actually correct, but it was being marked incorrect because of the way that they were inputting it into the platform. That led me to go ahead and use Edulastic on a more regular basis and not just here and there or not just for test prep. And I started building my own assessments in Edulastic that would give my students that feel. I went from having quizzes and unit assessments on paper to almost having all of my assessments on Edulastic. During distance learning, that was actually very helpful because I already had a lot of things built in Edulastic that went along with my lessons. But in addition to that, especially the students that looped with me, they were already familiar with Edulastic and were able to move on and not have to get stuck with the technical parts. So they were able to focus on the content. Something else that I found was that I really loved the live class board. And I'm the teacher that would go ahead and project that during class while students are taking the assessment. And that really helped my students with motivation and other social emotional needs. It helped those students to go ahead and see where they were. Some students really needed it to have a better idea of how much more they needed to do. Some students would constantly ask me to go down to their name in the live class board, or if I could just leave it at their name so that they could see how the little boxes change colors from green, red to yellow. And that really helped with some students that had really low confidence. Once they started seeing the green, and I do see the question that says, what is a live class board? It is that while students are taking the assessment, it is that that screen that tells us, the teacher, how students are doing on the assessment, like what students are actually working on, where they are, if they've answered a question. It also goes ahead and each one of the item questions will go ahead and change color. Green will be for the ones that students are getting correct. Yellow are the ones that are partially correct. Red are the ones that are incorrect. And that helps some of my students to go back and redo some questions, especially the ones that they were not getting correct. So in that sense, it did help go ahead and form those type of behaviors in students to, one, be motivated, to have more confidence in themselves, and also to go back and check their work, which was a big thing that I was struggling with the SBAC before I started using Edulastic. Can we go on to the next slide? And with that, my recommendations, when I first started using Edulastic, I will be honest, we didn't have the practice tests on Edulastic available. Now we do, and I have used the SBAC practice test as pre and post tests. So I can give them to students at the very beginning, and then I would usually give them to students like at the middle of the year, and then again at the end, and that would help, one, to see students' improvement, but it also really helped to see where students' gaps were and what students needed to focus on, and have those conversations with students in order to really help the student understand, this is the topic or this is the area that you need to go ahead and focus on and do a little bit more work on. One of the things that I highly recommend are the standards-based reports in Edulastic, because they do facilitate that conversation, not only with students, but also with parents, especially parents that want to know what standards are my students excelling in, where is it that my students need more work on, and it would help with those conversations. I would use the item banks to create my own assessments to give students a lot of different opportunities, and definitely give students the opportunity to retake assessments. Edulastic makes that easy for students to go ahead and retake, and for you to focus on that mastery learning. And I think that's it for my part.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Celia. I am also a big fan of Edulastic's redirect feature. For those of us just joining us, we will be sending out a recording of this session. So no worries if you missed the beginning section, that's totally okay. We will catch you up. All right, next up we have Maisha Phillips. Maisha is the Director of Elementary Math at her school in California. Maisha, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Excited to be with you all this evening. So we are going to jump right in. And so to start, the title of my portion is No Test Prep Required, because it's a part of the system. And so as you're thinking about next year, there's things that you can utilize this year as well, but embedding assessments within the year-long instructional plan that include items that mimic ways students have to show mastery on summative assessments creates the stress-free test prep environment. And so what we've done within our network is we've created approximately 20 to 40, depending on the grade level, 3 to 5 item assessments that we call mini assessments that are aligned to our the sequence of our math curriculum. And so what you're seeing on this slide is 3 sample items or 2 items that come from one of the assessments, and all of the assessments are between 3 and 5 items. They're designed to be short, and we have them across all of the assessments. There's coverage of the wide range of item types, both traditional and tech enhanced items, to provide students with experiences across the full range of item types that they might encounter on the summative assessment. Next slide. And so what you're seeing here is an example of what our year-long instructional windows looks like. This is an example of third grade. And so what you'll notice in the bottom row is the assessments are listed by topic. We utilize Eureka Math in our network. We've also added a quick description of what is covered on each of the mini assessments as a quick reference. And so this is year-long. You see within each module by topic, and the topic name that you see in that bottom row, that's the number of assessments that are available. So ideally, we have an assessment available for each topic. And again, all of the items do mimic the item types in the ways that students would have to show mastery on the summative assessment. And these were leveraged utilizing the item bank that Edulastic has available. Next slide. And so what we've also done, just so that it is the easy access that teachers have in order to access these, we've created playlists for each of the grade levels. And so here's an example of the Edulastic playlist. You're looking here at third grade module 1, and you're able to see all of the assessments that are available by each of the topics here. The playlist does include all of the modules and all of the assessments by topic for the entire school year. So a third grade teacher, access to their third grade math mini assessment playlist is going to provide them with all of the 3 to 5 item mini assessments that are available for the entire school year. Next slide. And so the major takeaways is embed assessments within the year-long instructional plan that include items that mimic the way students have to show mastery on the summative assessment. Regular and often exposure over time supports both accessibility and understanding, and the ease of access is an important component to ensure usage. And that's it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Maisha. I am seeing some questions about the premium. First is free Edulastic features. I will make sure to go ahead and get that link in the chat for you. In the meantime, we will move on and speak about some of Edulastic's more advanced settings and features. Some of these features are premium, just for full transparency. Edulastic premium, teacher premium accounts are $100 a year. Some teachers find it very, very worth it for those extra features for test prep, as well as the anti-cheating features. Some teachers just love the free version and are fully content with the free version. You can still have access to the public test library. You can still clone the assessments and modify as you need. You still have the live class board and those reports. So, you know, we want to be fully transparent about these features, but a lot of our Edulastic community find both accounts well worth it. All right, in the meantime, I'd like to bring your attention to some of our Edulastic features that are helpful, especially for standardized test prep. So your students can practice using these tech enhanced items, show their work with Scratchpad, learn how to use the Desmos calculator, and more. I will go ahead and drop a link in the chat that lays out the difference between premium and free subscriptions right here. All right, and we can move on to the next slide. Be sure to check out our SBAC practice and tips page. I will go ahead and also drop this link in the chat for you. It includes some of our favorite prep practices for the SBAC specifically. I also encourage you to check out some of our additional resources. The Teacher Training Hub includes live and on-demand trainings, swag requests, and more. The Distance Learning Hub is a great place to get tips on making the transition from in-person to remote instruction with Edulastic. The Facebook community is where you can chat with other educators using Edulastic. The Help Center is where you'll find tutorials, step-by-step instructions, and more commonly asked questions. So no matter what your question is, the Help Center is the place to start. And finally, the Edulastic blog has assessment best practices, featured assessments, events, and more. We will make sure to go ahead and drop all of those links in the chat for you. All right, and we can jump over to the next slide. Even with the many resources Edulastic has to offer, we still fully recognize that it's important for you and your students to take time for yourselves. This year may be the most stressful yet for some of us, as many states have not even had official standardized testing in a few years. So we wanted to include some of our favorite strategies and reminders that help us when we're feeling overwhelmed. I hope they can provide a moment of relief for some, if not all of you, at some point in time this season. All right, we can jump over. Now we're going to open it up to our Q&A and discussion with our presenters. So drop your questions in the Q&A box so we can be sure to address them. The Q&A box is separate from the chat. We will try our best to filter through the chat with those questions as well. But it will be easier for us panelists to see in the Q&A since we get the notification right on our screens as opposed to the chat. All right, so Lynn asks about the skins option. The player skins are a premium option. So I will go ahead and make sure I drop that link one more time, just so that you can see the side-by-side comparison of the two plans. If you have any specific questions about your account, you can email me at alyssa@edulastic.com, and I'll be sure to look into your question. All right, I'm going to, while we wait for some more questions to pop up in our Q&A box, I do have some questions for our presenters. If Celia, you would like to start, how often do you find yourself making your own assessments versus using the test library?
I was making most of my own assessments. So it was very often.
Nice. And what about you, Maisha?
So back to the system, because the system's been built, the creation is done. So when all of those assessments were created, it was, we created all of them because we wanted them to target very specific skills in how they align to each of the topics. But now that they're created, it's just a matter of leveraging them. We haven't, we don't do a whole lot of creating anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yes, totally understand. Yeah, the test library is really nice for some of those certified content, and it's just so much easier. I do have a question for both of you in the Q&A as well. Charlene asks, I know it's hard to tell, but have you seen better scores due to Edulastic?
So I can share, because I have heard from teachers within our network that do leverage the mini assessments regularly. They have talked about how they are really helpful in terms of providing students with that regular and often exposure. And so they feel like it is something that helps them to better access the assessment when they take the summative at the end of the year.
And my response is going to be yes, because I did notice that once the summative came at the end of the year, students' questions changed. Students' questions became more about the content and the questions and understanding the questions that were being asked of them, instead of how do I do this technical piece? So my students were no longer stopped by the technology.
Great, thank you both. All right, Kathleen, I see your question in here. If your district has purchased Edulastic, that most likely means that you have an enterprise account and you should have premium access. If you need help navigating your premium account, you could send me an email, alyssa@edulastic.com, and I'll be able to help you out with walking through that account. Yes, I'm seeing a lot of that question actually from LAUSD. Yes, so if your district has an Edulastic plan, it's the enterprise plan, and you should have access to those premium features. All right, I also saw a question in the chat. So Beatrice asks if students can see problems in a different order. With Premium, you can. There is a feature where you can provide differentiated versions of the assessment as an anti-cheating measure. That also includes things like Safe Browser. I will find a link for you. Oh, thank you, Christy. Christy did just provide a link about the anti-cheating settings in the chat. All right, another question for our presenters here. If either of you can jump in. Amir asks, how does it look at the school level? How can we create these common assessments and collect data?
So that's one of the reasons why I've been creating most of my own assessments. When I first started using Edulastic, I was the only teacher on my campus that was using it. But then afterwards, other teachers on my campus started to see the benefit, and we started creating common assessments on Edulastic. And we would be able to discuss what we wanted that item to look like. And then I would go ahead and do the technical piece of building it for the team. And all of us would be able to use that same assessment. Once that assessment was given, because it had been built in a collective and as a school site, we were able to see school site data and look at it as a team.
Yes, similarly, because I'm creating for a network of 10 elementary schools, I am looking at the playlist right now, and I'm able to see for many assessments that have been administered proficiency across all 10 schools. And so it rolls up. I'm able to see by the district, I'm able to see by school, as well as individual teacher. So it's definitely from a data perspective, it provides good information around how the students are doing.
Great, thank you so much. Lauren also asks, how long does it take you to create your own assessments?
At first, it would take me a while, but as I got more comfortable with the system and started understanding what items were what, it became a lot faster. And then I kind of knew, oh, I would sit in meetings with my team and I would be thinking in my head, oh, this question could be this type of question, and this is how I would build it. And that would make it a lot easier. So it's not that time consuming once you do it once, and kind of like Dr. Phillips mentioned, once you have that assessment built, you can reuse it as many times as you want. You can even go back to it and make revisions based on how students took it, where students got stuck, and then reuse it another year.
And I'll also say, because there were some new assessments that I created, and now the way that it's set up is there's the videos attached to the item type. So if you are struggling a bit, you can look at a quick like 1-minute video and it tells you how to create the item, and you can be still in real time in the system creating the item. And so they've made it even more user-friendly from when I created the bulk of these assessments a while ago now. So it's doable. It won't take you, it's going to be, of course, that first time, it'll take a little longer, but there's lots of resources embedded to support you through the process. And if you need the live chat, you can leverage that as well. And they always get back to you super fast.
Awesome, thank you. Yes, our support team is an awesome crew. All right, I am seeing a few questions about how to access these assessments and what you can do once you're in the test library. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, Caroline, for just a moment, just so I can walk through that process with you. Okay, presenters, can you just give me a thumbs up that you can see my screen? Good. All right, great. Okay, so once you are in your dashboard, you're going to go ahead under library, and this is a demo of a free Edulastic account. So there are features if you have premium that you might not see in my navigation. This is what a free account looks like. So you can go ahead to the test library here. I like to make sure I clear all my filters, and then you could go ahead and type SBAC. Once you're here, you will see plenty of assessments. Some are Edulastic certified, others are public assessments created by any teachers that are using Edulastic. So once you find an assessment you like, but you want to look at a student point of view, you can go ahead and click preview here. You can navigate, make sure it looks great, looks like what you're looking for. Okay. Exit preview mode. And then you have a few options here. You can hit clone. And you go into clone, it will ask you a couple questions. This is because in clone, you can modify some of the questions. So if you like some, but not the whole assessment, you can go ahead and edit as you would like. If you're ready to just go ahead and assign right away, you can do so. You'll go ahead here and select your class, set your settings here, test behavior. You can see these star features are the premium ones. So this is where our anti-cheating and our auto redirect settings are. So you can see these are premium features. And then when you're ready, you would hit this blue button in the corner to assign the assessment. So I hope that answered a couple questions. That was how you would navigate to find the SBAC questions on Edulastic. That is how you can really search for any test that you're looking for. You can also filter by grade, subject, standards, anything. You can even search by just the Edulastic certified library alone.